Can anybody out there tell me what the point of this TV show was at all? I mean, was it even a TV show in the first place? A horror comedy, woke propaganda? I'm just not 100% on that, since this reboot slash spinoff or whatever about the mystery gang in their younger years gets all of those things terribly wrong, while at the same time failing to elevate one theme over the other. It's a bad show in a nutshell, but at its core, it's so much worse than that. You see, sitting and watching this show week after week has been the closest I think I've ever experienced to bear hugging a family of rabid porcupines. To watch a show like Velma, one would have to acknowledge and accept that they're in for a 25-minute moral beating and forced guilt trip. It's one of those shows where you kind of just want to lose it, you know? You know what I'm saying? You just want to kind of lose it. It's that thing where you realize early on that the show is going to continuously jab at you and cause you insurmountable abdominal pain. But as it tries to exploit your love of the history it reminds you of constantly that the two of you once had, you're only curious enough to stay within its scope to see its eventual destruction. And that's exactly what I did in the name of research. Wow, I did it! I ruined Scooby-Doo in the first 30 seconds of the pilot. The rest of it? I don't know, but it sure sounds way better than that time I kissed Lee Pace against his will. Who's there? Is that someone I didn't threaten to fire?
Mindy.
Oh, I'm falling. Someone help me. Oh no, I'm falling backwards.
Get up, Mindy. I'm here to grant you season 2.
Season 2? But the first season hasn't even aired yet.
That's all right. Our financial decisions are solid. And we have a bright future ahead, as do you, Mindy. We need more writers like you who are willing to air your personal problems and insecurities on national television, while both ruining your own reputation for our benefit and giving the middle finger to fans of the original show.
What a big surprise. I can't wait to get started. Nobody's going to expect or be in favor of this at all.
Absolutely.
HBO Max's Scooby-Doo spin-off, reboot / parody is a concept that centers on a race-swapped version of the mystery gang's brains of the operation and clue-examining heroine Velma, as she navigates high school life, family drama, and investigates a string of murders involving her more popular classmates and somehow her missing mother. But in reality, this show is just a visual manifestation of Mindy Kaling's insecurities and hatred of others who don't align with her views. A glimpse into her mindset as she is granted by the powers that be an opportunity to project her romantic frustrations upon a well-established, widely loved character from Scooby-Doo and, fundamentally, change her appearance as well as her personality in the process. It's also a driving force for propaganda, a fact that becomes more resounding as the final 2 episodes conclude, and we'll discuss that. The funny thing about Velma, and I'm not talking about its humor by the way, is the fact that it's deliberately race and personality swapped to upset fans, and yet it's the least offensive thing about it. The truly offensive parts of Velma are when anyone in the show says anything, ever. No character in this monstrosity has anything meaningful to say besides making fun of real-life social issues, insulting people based on their race and sexuality, and breaking the fourth wall to make points that are never thoughtful or engaging. What's worse is that most of this thoughtless, uninteresting dialogue is spoken by equally thoughtless and uninteresting characters who, outside of their deliberate personality and race swaps, have no redeeming qualities, nor any distinguishable differences among them. Velma, Daphne, Norville, and Fred are different sides to the same person. That's right, they're all annoying, unintelligent, they never accomplish anything because plot armor gives them the answers they need to their pointless questions at the very end of each episode, and more importantly, they're nothing like the original characters they're based on, at all. Fred is a prime example since he's the only person who wasn't race swapped. This is clearly intentional as he is naturally the most chaotically evil member of the entire cast, showing time and time again that he has zero heart, or soul and walks all over anyone and everyone to elevate his respectable status as a popular kid, despite his unrealistic immaturity and inability to hit puberty. This is a far cry from the Fred we grew up watching, as the Fred of this new show cuts the legs off of people, has underage flings with both adult foreign women, and brains in jars. Don't ask if you haven't seen it, it won't make sense even if I explain it to you, and the emotional as well as moral punching bag for other characters to interact with anytime they please, at his expense of course. Fred is the embodiment of how Mindy and HBO Max apparently view white men, as immature, violent in nature, and controlling. Basically how Mindy Kaling views her ex-boyfriends. He makes the worst decisions at the worst possible times because that's his purpose, to screw everything up while everyone else cleans up his messes. Something similar can be said for Daphne. She is now a bisexual Asian with 2 lesbian mothers who are also incompetent police officers, but outside of that, she's got nothing going on except for strange on and off again feelings for Velma and a woe is me for not knowing my real parents storyline that never takes off and has been done many times before in other shows, but in a much better way. I truly believe that if not for the bisexual relationship between her and Velma, the show would have very little to work with when it comes to their character dynamic. I find it funny as well that Daphne is depicted as a popular girl that knows martial arts and was raised by cops because despite those things, she's still incredibly naive, gullible, and irresponsible. It's interesting that there are so many anti-male themes at play in this show because when the series focuses on Daphne's love life, Velma in turn plays the part of a toxic male in their relationship. The significant other that neglects her, betrays her, and lets her down time and time again, which is something that Velma and other characters in the show love to blame men for doing. Overall, Daphne is the same as she was in the original series, yet somehow meaner, and yet somehow even less capable than she used to be, while still managing to be just as submissive to psychological abuse from Velma as she was with Fred. But since we're on the subject of character dynamics, let's talk about Norville, who is not Shaggy at all from the original series, but a completely new character using Shaggy's real name. Norville has to be one of the most boring characters in the show. You want to feel refreshed because he's the only member of the mystery gang who attempts to be genuinely kind multiple times throughout the show. But those moments are ruined because the other characters verbally crucify him for even trying. This is apart from the fact that he simps for Velma, which is a shocker. I can't imagine a person like him ever falling for a person like her. They have no sensible chemistry whatsoever. And yet the show tries its darndest to convince you otherwise. Whether he hangs out with her due to him secretly being on drugs or not is unclear, but the fact that they end the series with his school counselor dad suggesting he smoke weed as a form of dealing with trauma sums up the direction that even I felt they always intended for this character to go in. To have 0 canine companions and to have 100% a miserable, drug-ridden future. Of course they would do this to Shaggy of all characters because of how popular he has always been, and because people love to make memes of him being the most powerful being in the universe. An opportunity they missed completely so that they could push an agenda instead. Norville is a beta male, a plan B for Velma in case things with Daphne and Fred don't work out. A safety net that Velma never utilizes because of her ludicrous double standards. I'd say the worst character of all, in fact, has to be Velma herself, who is actually just Mindy Kaling in cartoon form. Velma is such a terrible person that it's truly remarkable. Most of the situations that she and her friends find themselves in are entirely her fault. And yet she rarely, if ever, takes responsibility for her mistakes when she has a plethora of white people to blame for literally everything. If it isn't immediately accusing white people of being killers based on limited information, she otherwise gleefully dances around the idea of killing them in cold blood to make herself feel better about how miserable she is. The irony of her conception from Mindy and crew is that she's supposed to be the smartest member of the group and the most investigative, and yet she's everything but smart and leaves most of the investigating to Norville. So much so that at one point she begs Norville's girlfriend to let him solve a mystery with her because she's incapable of doing it all by herself. Yeah, you heard me right. This aligns with my past comments on Deus Ex Machinas in the series. Every solution to every problem is handed to Velma on a silver platter, either out of pure randomness or due to someone else in her life suddenly realizing the truth about something, or through outright blackmail, but it's never because of her putting her investigating investigative skills to the test, which goes completely against the messaging that she tries to push, since apparently everyone else except Velma is stupid and can't even begin to understand her or the situation. It makes me wonder why she ever had a corkboard in the first place. Like, what's with all the web conspiracy things that you're doing here if you don't even have any leads that make sense? Astounding. Velma is also purposefully out of shape and pudgy, constantly making jokes about how she can't jump or perform basic exercises. Her only strength in the series is her uncanny ability to stick her nose in everyone else's business and relationships, judge and criticize them, and then go out of her way to ruin them so that she can be the center of attention at all times, which she succeeds in on many occasions throughout the show's runtime. She's a consistent disappointment to her family and her friends, lies, cheats, steals, and shifts the blame to the first unsuspecting bystander she lays eyes on, and that's just scratching the surface. Yes, I know you like to scratch surfaces, Plato. And as if that wasn't enough for HBO Max to satiate its depraved desires of pissing everyone off, these teenagers are all hypersexualized throughout these 10 hernia-inducing episodes. The female high schoolers get completely naked in some scenes, only covered by light suds of soap, so that they can make fun of how sexualized they are by the writers and animators, and there are other scenes where teenage girls are outright twerking on and hitting on adult police officers. This is in addition to strip club scenes where Velma pole dances to gain her daddy's favor, or when the mayor and the sheriff of the town are discussing which teenage girls at the high school are the hottest. Yeah, this show is really disturbing, and I'm glossing over the fact, by the way, that random male teenage couples will pass by randomly making out with each other using their tongues. But Dread, other shows sexualize teenagers all the time. This is nothing new, and I'm not sure why you're so bothered by it. It's normal. Yeah. Other shows have sexualized teenagers, okay, and I've never found any of those instances to be appealing either. But the difference between those shows and this one is that Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang were never sexual characters prior to this reboot, and I don't count the episode where Velma blushes at another female in one of the more recent iterations of the gang. They weren't sexualized to such a depraved and disturbing degree as they are here. It's like taking Avatar: The Last Airbender and remaking it into a poorly animated spoof where Katara and Aang are twerking on their adult mentors and gouging the eyes out of the Fire Nation invaders while laughing maniacally. Actually, that last part sounds pretty cool, to be honest with you, but no, they would never do that on Nickelodeon, and they shouldn't be doing that with Scooby-Doo characters either. There are people who love to compare Velma to shows like Venture Brothers and Rick and Morty to try and rationalize the sexualization of teenagers. Well, if these people did it, then it's okay if they do it because everyone's doing it. But this is Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo is about solving mysteries, eating Scooby snacks, and watching monster chase montages. What's worse is that Velma as a show isn't just a spoof or a parody. It's labeled as a possible origin story for all of these characters, which contextually makes zero sense. I don't watch Scooby-Doo shows so that I can catch a glimpse of meddling kids getting down and dirty. I shouldn't even have to say why I watch Scooby-Doo. The reason for such a thing feels universally known at this point. Oh, right. Yeah, thanks, Plato. I almost forgot about the plot of the show, and perhaps that's because the plot that exists is being suffocated by the aforementioned cringe fest. Velma's story is present, but really there's only about 20 minutes of actual plot spread buttery thin across all 10 episodes. When I saw the final episode, I felt both robbed and completely vindicated, because while I knew that the killer's reveal would be extremely disappointing, I was also glad to discover that the killer's reveal was extremely disappointing. And yes, it was really disappointing. It's a killer in a welding mask wielding a knife, the most uninspiring masked creature that the showrunners could have come up with, and they used the fear of actual murder and death to try and elevate the impact that the killer has on the characters in the show, which is done terribly and fails. The biggest reason that it fails is because when this killer shows up, no one cares about it because crazier and wackier things happened just before it that defy the laws of logic and reason, rendering the serial killer plot absolutely meaningless. Oh, there's a killer with a knife stalking people. Oh, that's crazy. Meanwhile, Daphne just roundhouse kicked Velma into a wall, cracking it and smearing Velma's blood all over the gym. Yeah, are you kidding me? Seriously, what was the point? I mean, they had a good idea on paper. You see, the killer turns out to be Fred's mom. She married into Fred's dad's fortune and business, and in her words, built it from the ground up. and then gave birth to Fred. The problem is, Fred grew up to be a white male idiot who is completely incapable of running a company, unlike a strong, independent woman like his mother. And so Fred's mom comes up with the silly idea of using Edna Purdue's secret experiment lab to switch Fred's brain with that of a hot teenage girl because that would be so much better than just adopting a little girl and raising her to be successful. No, enough making sense. It's time for a killing spree. I know this is killing you on the inside. It's also killing me on the inside. Just bear with me for a few more minutes. So Velma's mom investigates the Jones mansion after seeing some kind of stupid ad in a newspaper. Sorry, not sorry. I guess I just forgot because it was just so unforgettable. And discovers that a scientist named Edna Purdue was performing brain swapping experiments on people for the government so that a wacky military general could make his monthly army enlistment quota. I swear, in times like these, I'm tempted to lose my glasses and never find them again. I mean, it's really difficult to put into words how awful the reveal for the story was. I would have given my thoughts on the ending, but I was far too busy writing in my notebook 5 things I could be doing instead of watching Velma. Incidentally, number 1 was a drawing of myself being trampled by a hippopotamus, but I soon erased it as it was far too similar to my current viewing experience. Regardless, I can't say I'm surprised that a strong, independent woman was both the protagonist and antagonist of the show, and that the murders Fred's mom committed were because of toxic masculinity. Ergo, Fred is so much of a white a-hole that it drove her insane, I guess. So at the end of the day, everything is Fred's fault. Literally everything, or should I say, everything is the fault of white males. This is the propaganda that I'm talking about. Velma as a show is so up in your face about everything having to do with race and gender that it's like having your brain hooked up to a mind control machine in a dark room while a television screams at you to stop being a white male. It really is absurd, and what's worse is that it's all done on purpose, as the series makes mention of its obvious intent many times while you're watching it. These moments are easy to pick apart though if you can spot them. Sometimes the show will just stop happening so that Velma can throw political jargon and false realizations at you, the viewer, and it's so obvious and cringe. Just imagine Mindy Kaling criticizing white people with just her voice, but that isn't working since her voice is irritating on its own, and so the animators add a Velma. And there you go, now you have a Velma. You have an image, but wait, no one's really listening to our propaganda, so let's put an interesting backdrop with people in there so that people will start to pay more attention. Oh, there we go. Okay, a little better, but the audience still isn't listening to our agenda, so let's add lights and sounds and make the scene more interesting so that when Velma stops to brainwash us, we can be somewhat engaged or distracted enough to fully absorb said message. Seriously, each third of the show is supposed to be comedy, horror, and propaganda, and since it's 2 episodes a week at 25 minutes each, both containing about 30% woke agenda pushing, that comes out to me having about 10 to 15 minutes of anti-male, anti-normalcy, woke agenda shoved into my eyes and ears, give or take. That's 10 to 15 minutes of propaganda every week, which is actually more than I believe anyone deserves, so a big salute to all of you other brave souls out there who waded treacherous waters in the name of research. This is the kind of thing that you learn other countries are doing these days. It's just 5th generation warfare under the guise of entertainment at this point. Unfortunately, screaming jinkies isn't enough to convert me to their extreme cause, however. Sorry, HBO Max, you almost got us. You were so close. Well, actually not that close. 7% on Rotten Tomatoes is a noticeably bad score, and it's truly refreshing to see such a wide-scale rejection of this project. Also, sitting at the lowest rung of IMDb as the worst rated animated series of all time does not bode well for you either, but who's paying attention to meaningless things like that when you have a whopping 800 or so people out there who actually enjoyed Velma? Sounds like a perfectly good reason to greenlight a 2nd season and spend a crapload of money on more content that people absolutely despise, if you ask me. It makes total sense because they say so, and who are we, mere peasants, to question them when they're breaking new ground? By race and personality swapping every single member of the mystery gang except Fred for obvious reasons, and making them the most unlikable characters in television history. If you're still unsure about whether they hate you or not, or if this whole endeavor was a sham designed to make you feel low about yourselves and hateful towards other people, just watch the finale for yourself so that you can see a grotesquely animated scene where Velma, covered in blood, twerks cheerfully over the brutally mutilated body of Fred's mother as Norville, Daphne, and Fred look on in utter horror and disgust. This is the essence of Velma. Twerking over dead bodies. Congratulations, team. We did it. We flushed our own careers down the toilet. Woohoo! And yet somehow, some way, these meddling kids are going to one day become the lovable, quick-thinking mystery gang that we all watched as children? Couldn't have said it better myself, Plato. No. I just have one question for you, Mindy and HBO Max. What did Scooby-Doo fans ever do to you? Was it something that we said? Did we break you at some point in your lives to where you felt that the only possible solution to your irrational disdain for us was to create an abomination that you and everyone else knew would be a failure on every level in order to push us all away? Okay, let's be real. They did make it for that exact reason. No one who loves the Scooby-Doo franchise would botch such a huge undertaking unless they meant to do it, no matter how many times the showrunners claim in interviews that they've always been fans. They're not fans, they're tools, and this show is a propaganda machine designed to divide. An advanced form of mind control that exploits our love for Scooby-Doo and twists it to fit their unholy vision of dehumanization as well as demoralization. But Mindy Kaling is probably super happy about the attention she's getting no matter how negative it is. From what I hear, she's receiving show offers left and right because I guess hate watching shows is the new way to make money, although anyone with an actual brain will realize that a YouTube review criticizing a show has no significant impact on viewership numbers. It's just fun to speculate because when you watch something as excruciating as Velma, you'd be surprised what kind of activities you have to come up with to make up for having your soul sucked out by this fugly succubus. There are some people out here who love to accuse YouTubers of ensuring Velma's success because they simply express that they don't like it and then explain why they don't like it, which is something that people have been doing like, I don't know, forever. But the bottom line is that if we don't talk about it, who will? Who's going to point out its flaws so that people who haven't watched it can at least be aware of what they're getting themselves into? Because I'll tell you this, HBO Max can try to monetize the hate watching, but the shock factor that this show had when it initially released is all but fading, and there's no way that the second season is going to be as momentously recognized as the first season was. If people truly dislike something, they're not going to watch more and more of it as it comes out just because it's so bad and that watching it is funny, but also because it regurgitates the same ideas over and over again and provides nothing new or interesting by the end. Since the show is consistently cringe from episode 1 to episode 10, this isn't the winning marketing strategy that people claim it to be. Eventually, people will lose interest in hating Velma, and soon after lose interest in HBO Max as well. The real mystery to solve is how long it will take before that happens. That being said, I hope you enjoyed my review of the first season. Like and share this video if you did. Consider subscribing to this channel if you want to see more of my content, and click that notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. I look forward to seeing you all again next time. Say goodbye, Plato. Meow meow.